I'm Erin Autin, Director of Research Programs at Zpryme, and I'm really excited to be here at ETS20 today, joined by a great group of panelists. So sustainability is really top of mind for everyone, like Chris Moyer just mentioned, wildfires out on the West Coast, hurricanes, destructive hurricanes on the East Coast. And each of our panelists today are really working towards combating climate change, moving towards a decarbonized and clean energy future. So I'm very excited for this discussion today, and please join me in welcoming our panelists. We have Laurel Peacock, who's the Director of Sustainability at NRG, Raya Salter, who's an attorney and member of the New York State Climate Action Council, and Maya Whalen-Kipp, who's the Director of Impact Teams at Common Energy. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Laurel, NRG is committed to a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2025 and net zero by 2050. And I think those are based on 2014 numbers. So what are some of NRG's strategies for reaching those ambitious goals?
Yeah, thanks, Erin. And thanks again for having me. So this issue is important for many of our stakeholders, and I think most importantly for our customers and as well as our investors. So being a large power producer, we've reduced emissions already more than 40% since 2014. But there's still a long way to go. So we've to date made some efforts. Successful efforts with decarbonization through a couple of levers. So retiring uneconomic units, fuel switching from coal to gas, and I think the biggest piece is the kind of technology piece. So there remains to be a lot of technologies that are not economically scalable yet, that the power sector really needs to kind of reach that full decarbonization. So we're really, we have our kind of midterm goal in sight, at 2025, but fully decarbonizing the power sector by 2050 or sooner, really, is going to be challenging, but it's not impossible. So we're very encouraged by kind of the renewables that are already proven and cost effective at scale, but there's a big gap in storage, for example, and I think that beyond the technical aspect of reaching these goals, I think also the big piece for us is really communication and dialogue on management of this issue. So like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty, so we want to make sure that we are communicating very clearly. We have a strong governance structure overseeing risks, including climate action. We, for example, for reporting, we are a supporter of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, and we are the first US-based power company to report using the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board metrics. So again, this is all about the dialogue with our key stakeholders, namely investors, but also customers. So both big businesses as well as some residential, to really have this open dialogue about where we currently are and where we're going. We're all trying to reach a low carbon economy, but the conversation is important because really no one has a silver bullet at the moment.
Great, thank you. And Raya, you're more on the government side, working with the New York State Climate Action Council. The state of New York also has some pretty ambitious goals. 85% reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040. So what are some of the ways that the Climate Action Council is working towards those goals?
All right, happy to talk about that, thank you. I'll clarify, I am an appointed member of the New York State Climate Action Council, and I am the policy organizer for the New York Renews Climate Justice Coalition. So I'll back up a little bit. The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that was passed last year was a big deal where we got over the finish line the exact energy goals that you mentioned. And a key part of what happened there was activists, New York Renews very much prominently, put into place energy, climate, and environmental justice provisions into that law, which do not exist in any other jurisdiction. One of the, what I like to call energy justice, or which is really in some part about procedure, process, and public participation. One of the elements of that law was the creation of the Climate Action Council. And the Climate Action Council's mandate or task is to create the scoping plan for how the state will get to those ambitious goals that you so aptly detailed. So the council itself is comprised of 22 members. Most are appointed by the administration. They are folks who run agencies like the Department of Transportation, the Department of Health, and then there are appointees, myself included. What else is interesting about this process, and what's so exciting about it, why I like to talk about it, is because I do believe the state has embraced this. And there are several panels that are to advise this council, a climate justice working group, power generation, carbon intensive industries. I mean, the list is actually too much to just enumerate. And just 2 weeks ago, 90 stakeholders, 90 were impaneled in these, this broad set of groupings to advise this council and this plan. So it's exciting in terms of, it's not happening in any other state, but it would be great if it was. And so, yes, we are pulling folks together to create a plan to get the state to those ambitious goals.
Yeah, I think you mentioned those 90 stakeholders, and this panel is appropriately named Everybody is a Stakeholder. So including more on the customer side. So Maya, I know you're doing some of that more on the ground work of promoting sustainability and clean energy with residential customers. I know you work a lot with young people, which I definitely want to talk about more in a bit. We'll get to that. But first, can you just talk a little bit about how Common Energy engages with customers in the community?
Yeah, totally. So the work that I do is made possible by all of these policies that support renewable energy development through the various states we work in. Right now, Common Energy works in 6 states, being New York, Maryland, Massachusetts, Maine, Minnesota, and Illinois, being mostly just Chicago. And it's really exciting to be kind of the product of all of these sustainability policies, getting people green jobs. And a lot of what my role is focusing on getting those green jobs in the hands of young people to have that opportunity to build up in sustainability careers and like actually build a green economy that we're all looking forward to. What I do a lot of the time is talking to customers directly, and I train young people to talk to customers directly. And it's really interesting in this role being able to get to know so many on the ground what like non-sustainability professionals are thinking about community solar or clean energy in general. So there's a lot of different obstacles that we come to face, but it also gives us an opportunity to talk to people about how important climate change is, and then talk about how they can be part of a solution. Because I think a lot of times people assume that all of these things are in the hands of policyholders or policymakers. Excuse me, and that you only really have one opportunity to get those people into power through voting. But what I'm trying to do is get people to understand that we can do that voting on a daily basis by thinking about where we put our energy bills.
Great, thank you. And as we move to a more sustainable grid in general, there's new technologies, distributed resources coming onto the grid, and customers, particularly large C&I customers, are starting to become their own energy producers. So Laurel, my question for you is, do you see NRGs and other energy providers' roles changing as DERs and other technologies come onto the grid? They've always been sort of the trusted advisors when it comes to energy and sustainability. Do you see that role changing? And if so, maybe how do you see it changing?
Yeah, I think the role of kind of energy companies to date has just been to make sure that when you flip a switch, the lights come on. But there's really, as you said, kind of a new kind of movement and need now for distributed energy resources, which provide both reliability as well as kind of customization. So we're absolutely seeing, for NRG and as well as other power companies that this kind of these new technologies and kind of this new customer choice is really, really important. So for large businesses, exactly like you said, that just really want control over where their power comes from. Increasingly renewables. There's a lot of companies committed to the RE100, which is a commitment to 100% renewable electricity, but more for residential customers as well. We're really seeing the trend of people are really thinking about the power behind the plug. So where does that come from? So I think the role for a company like NRG is twofold in that there's an education piece. So we really kind of want to explain the process, demystify it, and then also provide the solutions that they're looking for. So when it's a business, we're able to kind of go in and be that trusted advisor, the energy expert, so they don't have to. This process can be very confusing, a lot of paperwork, and it's really kind of not necessary for everyone to have their own in-house energy team. That's great if you can afford it, but that's not a lot of the businesses in the United States. And then at the same time, with residential services, I think everything's kind of becoming more connected. It's kind of the electrification of everything, smart homes, and so we're really kind of seeing a convergence of this technology and education, and we're absolutely poised to kind of deliver whatever customized solutions our customers are looking for.
Great. Raya, back over to the policy side. You mentioned meeting with those stakeholders, and so how can policymakers and energy providers work together to engage customers in terms of sustainability, and particularly lower income customers, to ensure that they are not left behind in this transition?
Well, I definitely want to, I thought Laurel said some good things about education, outreach. One of the things, one of the things I think is on the from a policy perspective is on that program edge. I think we've learned a lot of lessons, and particularly rolling out energy efficiency programs as to what some of the barriers are to getting robust participation. And I think identifying those barriers, solving them, and also thinking about how folks can have deeper ties especially when it comes to just any community in general, but also low-income communities, is having deeper relationships with service providers in that community that may not be focused on energy. And so that could be housing services or others. So sort of creating that network of relationships. I think a couple of barriers that I've seen that I would love to see addressed. One of them is, I think this is true in many areas, but if you can qualify for one program and you fill out copious paperwork to qualify for, say, for one energy efficiency program, or perhaps for food stamps, you should be able to kind of automatically qualify for everything else that you may be eligible for. There's this sort of re-upping and re-application barrier that is something that I've seen a lot. And another piece that I think could be better executed is actually putting more resources towards that customer edge in terms of help of who actually goes into the community and paying people to facilitate these conversations. So say in New York, where we've got community solar, and it's excellent. But it's kind of left up. You've got developers who have to engage with, say, an apartment complex of people, and maybe a volunteer who's on the board or in a community center. And it's a lot to overcome as a volunteer. So really putting more resources into that edge. Anyway, those are just a couple of thoughts off the top that others seem to agree with.
Yeah, I see Maya nodding along. Do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything Raya is saying. I think so much about energy and especially utilities, it's not as something that people outside of our circles think about or really know how to conceptualize. So having someone they trust in their community that we can educate as energy professionals, and then them kind of being an ambassador on the ground. And those ambassadors need to be from the communities. So if we're going to be working in low-income communities, we're going to need to be hiring people from those communities, and we need to train them and educate them to be the kind of spokesperson, as well as I just call it a community energy advocate or community energy educator. And that's really how you're going to get way more stakeholder engagement and people more excited about these type of programs who are not necessarily always thinking about it from a climate lens.
Yeah, and so Maya, I know you were a Peace Corps volunteer, you mentioned on our prep call for this panel. And do you think that, well, I know you said that that work has translated well to this work you're doing now. Is it because of that similar experience working in those types of communities, or why has it translated so well for you over to the energy industry?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. I think it's really interesting to talk about stakeholders and Peace Corps because a lot of what we do as a Peace Corps volunteers, and especially, at least in my experience, I can speak for myself, my first 6 months or so when I was started to work with the community I was in, I was just honestly having tea with grandmas. I was going from house to house and like having conversation. It's called telenoa, and I was in Fiji, and that's just like the word in Fijian language. And building those relationships before I could get any projects off the ground, before I could have any new ideas coming in, you need to build relationships. And so that is kind of like very foundational in my work that I do with young people, because I try to think about young people in their own communities. So who are the people they can build relationships with? And I always talk to them about not just going in head first to be like, you need to sign up for community solar and you need to, do something and act now about climate change, be really radical about it, but kind of meeting people where they're at, asking them questions and kind of getting a read on where people in their community are at in terms of their relationship with their energy, relationship with their bills, their money, energy in general. And you're much more likely to have trust. I think in this field and in my work in Peace Corps, trust was like the foundation of it all. And then, behavioral change and policy change gets built after that.
Well,
Funny
Bula, Maya, we have to connect on Fiji.
It's funny that you mentioned trust. I think Erin Hardick and Chris Moore yesterday in our opening of day 4 of ETS talked about some of the themes that had been emerging out of the event. And trust was definitely one, whether it's within a utility organization or an energy provider organization, or trust between the organization and their customers. So I'm really glad you mentioned that, and that, yeah, it just seems so important, that piece of really listening and understanding what people need before you try to just provide them with something. So sort of on that note, are there any other industries that you can think of, Laurel, or lessons learned from other industries that the energy industry could apply?
Yeah, well, another thing that Maya said that really resonated with me was just meeting people where they're at. So I think that's, what we try to do a lot of the time. We're not a regulated utility, so to our advantage, we really kind of, I think we have more mobility and we're able to kind of pivot to, new products and services, I think more so than kind of regulated utilities. But, what we kind of like to talk about is thinking about energy as a consumer product good, in the sense that, for example, a lot of us use an app to order coffee, and we have coffee exactly like we want it, and it is on demand. It's ready. We know exactly when we can pick it up. And so, and we all like our coffee different. So, kind of a similar parallel is that, no family or business is identical. And so in that sense, how can we think about, plans that are, cost effective, that meet, those families' needs, and absolutely that are reliable, delivered in a safe manner, and then, that are increasingly, low or no carbon. So in that sense, we're really kind of using the model from a CPG perspective to really think about customization.
Raya, do you have any lessons learned from other industries that you've seen?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was listening to Laurel talk about coffee vis-a-vis energy or beverage, or like on-demand customized service. And I think that sounds really, that sounds really cool. Well, there's a lot going on in terms of the change of the business model. I know in New York, we've talked a lot about in terms of distributed energy resources. I don't know if folks heard about the Reforming the Energy Vision proceeding. I represented NRDC in that proceeding, so I was really deep in it. But this idea that the utility can really transform into a service provider that provides a platform for a universe of distributed energy resources, including solar, including deep energy efficiency. And it's, and that process sort of goes forward, but it really is fascinating when you are thinking about things like energy efficiency and demand response, that really the customer truly is a stakeholder, and new ways to look at customer engagement, customer service, be it coffee or otherwise, are definitely on the menu. Sorry, I said it.
So Maya, going back to Gen Z and your working with young people, they are starting to enter the workforce now, and I think sometimes they get a bad rap. People will say something about TikTok and roll their eyes, but we've got a couple at Zpryme that I've been working with, and I think they've been really great to work with so far. So just what about Gen Z gives you a sense of optimism in working with them?
Oh gosh, that is such a good question. First, I think Gen Zers are phenomenal. I'll put that out there. I think working with young people is amazing. I mean, I'm not too far out of that age group anyway, so it's really nice to see the opportunity of what the economies that we're going to build 10 years from now, because these are people that are not going to want to work for a company that is not thinking actively about their carbon emissions. Mm-hmm. And if we're mobilizing the entire generation to ask those type of questions before they're going into job interviews, before they apply to colleges or grad schools or whatever, they're thinking about what are the admissions behind this. I have conversations a lot of times around metrics, and we don't talk about dollars, we don't talk about USD, we talk about how much carbon emissions is working on this project going to reduce. And like literally just last week, I'm ordering bucket hats because that is what is in style with the Gen Zers. Recently learned that. And we did a bunch of research and found a company that planted trees for every embroidered print they do. And they're really thinking more actively than I think any previous generation has about what they're doing with their time. And how is that helping others, and how is that helping the planet? I think they're also a very well-educated generation, being internet literate from the get-go. They have access to all the data and all the information about, that we are well above 400 parts per million of carbon in our atmosphere. And that's scary, I think there's a lot of Gen Zers and younger people that have a lot of anxiety around that, and really feel mobilized to do something. So I think it's a huge opportunity for the energy field, particularly in other aspects of sustainability professionals or professional sectors, to utilize that energy and momentum that they bring to our professional spaces, to really get some great work done. So everyone should hire young people. That's my 2 cents.
And what about in terms of them as customers, Laurel? Do you have any insight into how they engage with their energy or their energy providers? Will it be different from even millennials and other generations?
Yeah, well, I think they're still pretty young, so they're probably just kind of, graduating college and entering their first job, maybe second job. So they are absolutely incredibly important because they are our future customers. And so I think the biggest thing, a lot of the characteristics that Maya mentioned, we take to heart for sure. So this kind of value and purpose driven, spending, consumer spending habits, it's, in my role in sustainability, it's grown just more and more important. I've been in this field for, I don't know, over 10 years or so. And it's not just, like a separate little, report that you kind of put on the side. These are some of the main questions we're getting is absolutely about our environmental, attributes, carbon emissions, water, but then also on the social side too. And so I think there's a lot of these issues that are table stakes really at this point. And again, like Maya said, companies can't hide anymore. There is, we have to be transparent and build that trust. So with Gen Z who are also going to be our future workforce, absolutely. So we need to attract them in both senses, as far as really proving that we are a company that believes in stewardship to the environment, to our communities, and that we are offering a product that meets their expectations, exceeds their expectations, whatever that is. And so that's going to be crucial, I think, for all energy companies to think about in the near term, but especially in kind of the more mid to long term.
Yeah, I'll just commend you on NRG's sustainability reports. They're very thorough. I read through a couple of them before this panel.
Thank you.
It's great to have all that information in one place.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Raya, did you have something to add?
The young people are on fire. They're spectacular. I know in my work as a policy organizer in New Yorker News, I work with a lot of incredibly impassioned leaders. They really are leaders. They are organizing. They are stepping up and stepping forward. This is the cause for their generation. I do believe the movement belongs to them. And yeah, it's just, whatever can be done to truly empower and give voice to their leadership I'm here for it.
All right, so I have one more question for all of you, but I just wanted to remind our audience that you can submit questions in the chat box in our event platform here. Looks like we do have one question that we'll be able to get to. So my colleagues, Erin Hardick and Dylan Lockwood, and I earlier this year had a conversation with a woman named Elle Carberry who works for IBM. And she talked a lot about how a lot of women enter the industry through a sustainability lens. But over the years that she's been in the industry, she's seen that lead to more women engineers and technologists. So I just thought it would be a fun question to ask you all, since we're all women on this panel, which I love. And it's also one of our favorite questions to ask at Zpryme. We ask a lot of people this question. So the question is, did you find energy or did energy find you? Meaning, was it from a young age that you knew you wanted to be in this industry, or did you sort of just fall into it? And Raya, let's start with you.
I will say I found energy. I love that question. That's really cool. In that that entry point lens is really interesting and important, because one of the things, if folks who are interested in economics and technology, so there is this, there's kind of a push-pull. There's like I was interested in things like geopolitics and what was going on with oil, et cetera. And then you start digging in, and then you know, there is this sort of gravitational pull based on interest area as well, I would say. And I think that something that's really important, I think one of the reasons why, you know, it's like, it's important to have women in these positions, not just because it's like, it's fair and it's cute and it's the right thing to do, but it's because we have fundamental contributions, and we often, not always, often we think about men, women, children, you know, we can have a different frame. Maybe that's one of the reasons why sustainability is something that attracts. And there are, at this point, there are a lot of women engineers who are other folks who are trained and ready to be brought in now. So I think accountability in terms of like, yes, we need to be bringing folks in, but accountability in terms of folks are also out there now, and we need to be hiring us.
I agree. Wholeheartedly agree. Maya, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to echo everything Raya said. I think the way we kind of move it forward is just making sure that there are opportunities out there in the hiring process. I think energy found me. I came actually initially from a more marine science background. My undergrad was in biology. My graduate degree is in climate science and policy, so it did have a fair amount of energy work, but I was like very oceans focused until my current role. And I do think, and I think this is true for a lot of areas of STEM in general, not just energy, but that women find their way into these spaces through either an educator perspective. So either you're going to be a STEM educator or another kind of human-centered pathway. And that's beautiful in so many ways, because that's showing holistic thinking that I you know, maybe I'm biased to say, but I do think women are better at holistic like thinking. I don't know if that's appropriate to say on this panel or not, but thinking about, you know, young people, thinking about people in other countries, other types of demographics, which is what we need when we're talking about climate action, and changing the grid to a more efficient system, as well as a more less carbon intense system. So I think it's a really cool thing that sustainability brought a lot of more women into this space, and we'll probably continue to do that. I know my graduate program, which I went to Bard College for the Graduate Center for Sustainability, and there's about maybe 60 graduate students at any time, and it's about 75% women. So this is a rapidly growing field of highly trained people that are really interested in this space. I think it's the way we grow it even further is drawing those connections from other areas of sustainability. Let that be more traditional ecology and biology, or straight up climate science or food tech or anything like that. And showing that energy and climate is actually like kind of the unsaid undertones of all of these other sectors too. Which is something I think that I've learned a lot about in the past couple of years, and has gotten me a lot more passionate and driven to be a leader in this space.
Great. Well, we're definitely glad to have you in the space. And Laurel, how about you?
I'm going to say it was a little bit of both. So I, you know, personally come from a very kind of strong environmentalist family, and so sustainability, you know, with respect to my professional career has always been my choice. And then it was just kind of a right place, right time as far as coming to NRG. And, you know, I'm so fortunate because when you think about it, I mean, if you really want to make a difference in climate action, come over to NRG. You know, this is where it's happening. This is, you know, our CEO likes to say it's, you know, the lifeblood of the modern society. It really is. So, you know, there's a lot of work to be done. You know, and I think that this is kind of the sector where a lot of it is going to happen. Of course, we can't do it, you know, on our own, but I think that's one of the things that really drew me to this is the difference that I can make kind of from within. And so far it's been, you know, really, really rewarding. And, you know, again, fortunate NRG that we do have some women in our senior leadership positions. So, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done, particularly in the power sector. You know, there are examples of, you know, what it looks like to be, you know, a woman leader in this industry, and you know, whether it's on the board or head of our retail business, you know, there's a lot of mentorship opportunities, which I think are really important in this sector as well. So I think we're on a good path.
Yeah, I didn't know until I worked in the industry just how, like you said, it just really touches everything. Energy is such a driver of everything, and such a good place to start making a change from within. And I do have to give a shout out to Texas, because we've got Jackie Sargent, who we just heard from, leading Austin Energy, Paula Gold-Williams leading CPS Energy in San Antonio, Marianne Berlinski at EDF over in Houston, and Whalen-Kipp over at El Paso Electric, their new CEO. So shout out Texas for your women energy leaders. It looks like we do have one question so far from the panel, or from the audience. So the question is, I find so often the climate message gets lost because it is so macro. When you are talking about green jobs for young people, that is making it more economic and bringing it down to a micro level. Do you find that level of translation of the climate message to the actionable economic level more impactful? So Maya, I think that might be a question for you.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely take that. I definitely identify with that. I think when you just think about climate change and climate science, it is overwhelming, to say the least. And I think what the energy sector has the ability to do is to be like, yeah, these are all the numbers and this is the data, but this is a tangible thing you can do. You can sign up, in my case for community solar, because I work for a community solar company, or another green energy platform. And all of those things is just, you know, changing your utility bill a little bit, or signing up for a different type of program, which most of the time you can do online and it takes like 5 minutes. That's a tangible action. I think a lot of the sustainability world or environmental world is about behavioral change. And a lot of times we don't think, you know, or we don't feel that the behavioral change has a big enough impact. What I think is really unique about the energy sector is that when you have the behavioral change of, you know, joining a clean energy program, you have a tangible change, like you have a tangible impact. There's math that can be done that can show your energy consumption coming from renewables versus fossil fuels, and how much carbon emissions that actually reduces. So it's a lot more clear than, let's say, going vegan, even though obviously that's important too. I think it's a lot more tangible and a lot more digestible for a lot more people. That, of course, being said, going back to the jobs point, I think at the end of the day, our economy is also a reflection of our culture. So what are we doing in our daily lives is what's showing what we value as a, you know, community at large. So giving or getting people jobs in this field is showing that we are prioritizing clean energy development, or prioritizing doing something about climate change. And I think young people are the people to do that because they're super excited about it. Yeah, I'm happy to chat with anyone one-on-one after this in more detail. I could talk forever.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we definitely want to talk with you more, and we can share contact info after this. I do want to make one comment. I was mistaken that Kelly Tomlin is the new CEO of El Paso Electric. Whalen-Kipp was the old CEO. So shout out to Kelly Tomlin over in El Paso. One other question that we got: what are you looking for from suppliers or partners to help you with stakeholder engagement, or to demonstrate our stakeholder engagement?
Well, I can take that one. So this is a really important issue. So, you know, I'm glad someone brought it up. for, suppliers can mean a lot of things. So, for us, I think it spans services to, parts for our power plants, but then also suppliers that we work with to provide, distributed energy resources. So I think there's a risk mitigation piece in that we're committed to, a low carbon future. We want to make sure that our suppliers are thinking about that as well. So they're not exposing themselves to climate risks. And I think that, it's a lot safer and kind of easier to do business with those suppliers that are proving they have a strong governance, around their company, and you can rely on them and trust them. And then also from a kind of a value chain standpoint, for NRG, we're really looking at the missions in, up and down our company. And so a big piece is right now fuel providers in our suppliers supply chain, which is why we are a founding member of the Natural Gas Supply Collaborative. So, for us, for the power sector, really one of the big things is addressing natural gas, its importance and its role right now in transitioning to a low carbon fuel. And we have to work with those suppliers. We would like to work with the ones and reward the ones that are, making, a change in order to, become more, environmentally friendly, greener, whatever that means. But I think that we have to push, there's a lot of push and pull here. We have to push our suppliers in order to really solve, or mitigate all the kind of, impacts of climate change. And in order to, reach this zero emissions power sector, we can't do it without our suppliers as well. So we have to bring them along with us. And I think that conversation is happening, but it could happen a little bit faster.
I think we have time for one more question. We've got about 2 minutes left. So how do we who are working in the public utility sector better partner to drive sustainability and be a positive stakeholder? And this person is part of Austin's Green Building program. So they're on the front lines.
I can say, I think there are so many ways. More and more, as Laurel and Maya both said, that because of the growth of clean energy, there are so many really progressive and engaging roles within utilities. And part of that is, I would say, jumping in, I think utilities more and more have an outreach arm of, folks who, want to do public engagement, public education, in particular in areas like green buildings and energy efficiency, and also in advocacy spaces, be it before the Public Service Commission. I do a lot of that work. There are a lot of stakeholder collaboratives that I think, and co-design processes, depending on where you are, you can participate in them, you can advocate for them. It's just, the utility has such an important role. I'm thinking about in New York, the work that we did with Con Edison at NRDC and housing and community renewals to measure emissions in some of the large buildings. There are just a lot of creative partnerships.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. You all are really doing a lot of inspiring work, and so definitely appreciate your contributions and for being part of ETS20, and look forward to continuing this conversation into ETS21. Thank you all.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.